Watchmen is a graphic novel that ran monthly from 1986 to 1987 and created by the British creative team of Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons. In the world of Watchmen, vigilantism was outlawed, forcing most of the superheroes to retire. Exceptions to this rule were Dr. Manhattan and the Comedian, who worked with the government. Another exception is Rorschach, who continues operating even though it's illegal. Watchmen begins with a character called the Comedian, also known as Edward Blake, who is a former superhero being murdered. Rorschach investigates the murder and comes to the conclusion that someone is hunting down old superheroes. Rorschach goes to an ex-superhero Daniel Dreiberg for help. Meanwhile, Laurie Jupiter ends her relationship with the superhero Dr. Manhattan and begins one with Daniel. News is then released showing that people who are around Dr. Manhattan will get cancer. This forces Dr. Manhattan to leave Earth and retreat to Mars, due to him being fed up with humanity. After this, Rorschach is caught by the police and is sent to prison, where a psychologist tries to help him. However, the psychologist is only really helping Rorschach under the assumption that healing him will make him famous. Dreiberg and Jupiter team up and don their superhero suits to break Rorschach out of prison. Meanwhile, due to Dr. Manhattan's departure, the threat of a world war grows ever bigger, due to America losing its main defense. As a result, Dr. Manhattan teleports Jupiter to him on Mars, where she convinces Dr. Manhattan into saving the world. Rorschach and Dreiberg realize that another ex-superhero, Ozymandias, is behind all of the superhero killings, along with faking the cancer claims against Dr. Manhattan. Dreiberg, Rorschach, Dr. Manhattan, and Jupiter all go towards Ozymandias' base to stop whatever he plans. Ozymandias reveals that his plan is to teleport a psychic-powered squid onto New York, killing thousands of people, as a means to unite the world against a common threat: aliens. Along with this, Ozymandias also reveals that he had to kill the Comedian due to him finding out about his plans, and had to exile Dr. Manhattan to Mars to get him out of the way. The heroes attempt to stop Ozymandias, but Ozymandias reveals that he went through with his plan 35 minutes ago. Now this is a very short and concise explanation of Watchmen and misses out on all of its subtext and subplots, so I highly recommend that you read it. The question that is asked many times in Watchmen is who watches the Watchmen, based off a Latin phrase which translates to who will guard the guards themselves. The heroes in the story try their very best to keep the world from succumbing to crime and injustice, but is there anybody who keeps the Watchmen themselves in check? Are these heroes now part of the problem that they thought they could fix? And perhaps most importantly, what makes the moral compasses of these heroes more fit than that of societies? Dr. Manhattan is my favourite character in all of Watchmen, and is probably one of my favourite characters in all of fiction. I love the way it's written, and the way he used to deconstruct the idea of Superman. When most other media, like The Boys, tries to deconstruct Superman, they normally go the route of, what if Superman was evil? And don't get me wrong, that can be interesting, but I leave it so overdone and not very subtle. Instead of this, Moore and Gibbons take a much more nuanced approach, where instead it asks, what if Superman's immense powers left him isolated from everyone, making him not care about anything? Can he even have normal, healthy relationships? The idea of not caring about anything nicely sums up Dr. Manhattan's morality, which is that he doesn't see evil. Everything to him is just a meaningless event flowing through time, and because of this, Manhattan allows many injustices to incur in front of him. To fully understand why Manhattan has this morality, we must understand why Manhattan is the way he is. Dr. Manhattan was born John Osterman in 1929 Germany, where his father was a watchmaker. Eventually, John becomes a researcher in atomic physics at a facility in Arizona. Whilst working there, John meets Janie Slater, and the two begin a relationship. At the facility, they are doing their primary research by the use of an intrinsic field generator, a machine capable of destroying the bonds between atoms. An accident happens, causing John to be locked into the intrinsic field generator, where he was completely annihilated. The following months revealed that John had somehow survived as an electromagnetic pattern and had learned to control particles. He then used this ability to reform his body. Once John had returned, he tried to continue his relationship with Janie Slater. However, this did not work due to John now being unable to relate to her in any way whatsoever. Gradually, as the Cold War started, Manhattan was turned to a pawn of the US government, wherein he fought in the Vietnam War. Quite a while later, after all the heroes have retired, Ozymandias begins to enact his plan, starting by getting rid of Manhattan. To do this, Ozymandias faked evidence saying that Manhattan had caused cancer in his ex-partner, Janie Slater, along with many other people he'd interacted with for a long amount of time.
I am tired of Earth. These people. I'm tired of being caught in the tangle of their lives.
Examples of the previously mentioned injustices are when Manhattan kills innocent people during the Vietnam War, even though the war really has no effect on him, as well as when the comedian murders a pregnant woman.
My face! What did you do, you bitch? You hurt my face! You whore! You filthy, stinking, worthless... Blake. Lousy piece of... Blake, don't do it. Medic. I gotta find goddamn medic! Oh, that bitch! Blake, she was pregnant. You gunned her down. Yeah, that's right. Pregnant woman gunned her down. Bang. And you know what? You watched me. You could have changed the gun into steam, or the bullets into mercury, or the bottle into snowflakes. You could have teleported either of us to goddamn Australia, but you didn't lift a finger.
An interesting thing to note here is the way the word Blake don't and do it are arranged. Moore and Gibbons decide to sort of muddle up Manhattan's wording, making it look like Manhattan is just saying do it rather than don't do it. Coupled with Manhattan's lack of action in saving the woman, this shows Manhattan's true disregard for human life. In the final chapter of Watchmen, Manhattan's moralities go into full swing. After Ozyman has sent out his killer squid, he asks Manhattan, "I did the right thing, didn't I? It all worked out in the end." Manhattan simply responds with, "In the end, nothing ever ends, Adrian. Nothing ever ends." Manhattan saying nothing ends is him explaining his morals. There is no final meaning or purpose to the actions that humans take, which means nothing matters. Manhattan isn't saying what Ozymandias did was right, but he also isn't saying it was wrong. He continues to remain neutral in the same vein as the universe. Along with this, Manhattan's morality is also capable of twisting. Once Manhattan exiled himself to Mars, the lack of his power on the United States side led to the Soviet Union invading Afghanistan, bringing the world closer to a nuclear war than ever. During this time, Manhattan briefly brings Laurie Jupiter, one of Manhattan's ex-lovers, onto Mars with him. Laurie inadvertently convinces Manhattan to save humanity by coming to the revelation that the comedian, a man who raped her own mother, is in fact her dad. Manhattan marvels at the improbable chances of this occurring, and thereby, this feat can be applied to all of human life.
Miracles. Events with astronomical odds of occurring, like oxygen turning into gold. I've longed to witness such an event, and yet I neglect that. Inhuman coupling. Millions upon millions of cells compete to create life for generation after generation, until finally your mother loves a man. Edward Blake, the comedian, a man she has every reason to hate, and out of that contradiction against unfathomable odds, it's you. Only you that emerged to distill so specific a form from all that chaos. It's like turning air into gold. A miracle. And so, I was wrong.
Manhattan's last action, after Ozymandias has sent out his squid and Manhattan tells him nothing ever ends, is to leave Earth again. Ozymandias points out this contradiction, with Manhattan's replenished interest in humanity while he leaves human life again. Manhattan simply responds by saying, "Maybe someday I'll create human life." The comedian's ideology is almost similar to Manhattan's, except for one important difference. Like Manhattan, the comedian is a nihilist. He believes nothing has meaning, but differently to Manhattan, the comedian gives into his savage nature. Whilst Manhattan serves as a true reflection of characters like Superman, the comedian serves as a reflection of the whole world of Watchmen, morally lost and bankrupt.
We're society's only protection.
From what?
Are you kidding me? From themselves.
The comedian kills pregnant women, he kills innocent people protesting, he covered up Watergate, and above all, he raped Sally Jupiter, the original Silk Spectre. The comedian is eventually exposed for his behavior during the Vietnam War, wherein he killed innocents. However, these charges are dropped due to lack of evidence. The social structure allows the comedian to continue his violence. These examples of violence and cruelty, used in conjunction with his association with imperialistic genocide, highlight the comedian's morality, an allegory for the traditional American culture, or even the American dream, which seems to be his main motivation. The comedian best shows the flaws in American society during his time in the Vietnam War. He helps out his country by finding the enemies, yet he also shoots kids and sets innocent people on fire. The comedian's name comes from his belief that there is no such thing as good and bad, due to the very nature of mankind. The idea that somebody as morally lost as him can be considered a hero by society is hilarious. He then deliberately plays up this idea of him being morally bankrupt, as he knows nobody can stop him. Although the comedian seems to have no humanity, he does. He just hides under all of his cynicism and brutality. While flying over an uncharted island during 1985, the comedian noticed something suspicious. Upon investigating, the comedian found that it was the secret facility of Ozymandias. In this time, the comedian learned of Ozymandias' crazy plan to create world peace at the cost of many lives. For all the disregard for human life the comedian has shown, the idea of the death of American civilians seems to traumatize him. This results in the comedian walking into an ex-villain's house, taking sorrow in the pointlessness of human affairs.
I mean, what's funny? What's so goddamn funny? I don't get it. Somebody explain. Somebody explain it to me.
Rorschach is probably the most famous character coming out of Watchmen, and is arguably the biggest way Warren Gibbons explore morality. Rorschach is shown to always be surrounded by what he deems as evil and cruel, which is rapists and murderers. In many ways, Rorschach seems to be similar to the main character in Taxi Driver, Travis Bickle. Both of these characters are constantly exposed to the filth that the world has to offer, and they prefer to see nothing but the filth.
Dog carcass in alley this morning, tired tread on burst stomach. This city is afraid of me. I have seen its true face. The streets are extended gutters, and the gutters are full of blood. And when the drains finally scab over, all the vermin will drown. The accumulated filth of all their sex and murder will foam up about their waists, and all the whores and politicians will look up and shout, "Save us." And I'll look down and whisper, "No."
A recurring image in Watchmen is a graffiti tag called the Hiroshima Lovers, which features a couple embracing each other as a bomb kills them both. Rorschach sees this picture every day. Instead of viewing it as an image of a couple displaying one last act of affection before they die, Rorschach just says, "Silhouette picture in doorway, man and woman, possibly indulging in sexual foreplay. Didn't like, makes doorway look haunted." Because of Rorschach's constant exposure to the filth and being abused as a child, this leads to his worldview, which is much like his mask, just black and white. He doesn't have the ability to understand morally grey situations, and because of this he punishes every crime, no matter the severity of it, with vast amounts of violence. Warren Gibbons present that having this worldview can be very problematic. Rorschach kills 2 dogs who had eaten a child, as he viewed them as evil. However, the dogs were not evil creatures, they merely didn't know what they were doing. They were innocents, yet Rorschach murdered them, which by his own logic would mean that Rorschach himself is a bad person, yet Rorschach doesn't quite pick up on this. Eventually, Rorschach leaves the murderer to burn to death in his own house, dealing with violence for the use of equally bad violence. An interesting thing to note in the scene is that Rorschach's mask turns into a smile when he burns down the man in his house. This implies that Rorschach gets some sort of joy in fighting crime. This is explored in Rorschach's journal entries, one of them being when a mugging happens. Rorschach describes the situation like something grand, the first bubbling nights of the city's evening chorus. Rorschach then goes on to say how he saw something rewarding in the mugger's eyes, then calls the night a generous one after attacking the mugger. This all points towards Rorschach fighting crime not out of the goodness of his heart, but rather as something that will allow him to let out the emotions he has pent up inside of him from his abusive parents, showing that rather than wanting to fight crime for the sake of it, he needs to do it as a sort of psychological revenge. However, much like Dr. Manhattan, Rorschach is shown to be able to stray from his moralities. In Manhattan's case, it was him viewing human life as something that has importance. In Rorschach's case, it's showing mercy to an evil person. He may not do it much, but he definitely does a few times throughout the novel, adding some sympathy to him. An example is when Rorschach interrogates Moloch, an ex-villain. Moloch reveals to Rorschach that he's dying of cancer, hence the reason he's taking illegal pills. Instead of Rorschach confiscating the pills, he shows mercy to Moloch and leaves the pills on the table. Additionally, when Rorschach is being verbally attacked by his landlady, Rorschach chooses to take the high road and not do anything to her. Although these actions are quite small, they demonstrate that Rorschach is capable of straying from his black and white morals. Rorschach's morality crescendos in Watchmen's final chapter, where a moral conflict begins once Ozymandias succeeds in creating world peace but the cost of many lives, basically asking the question of is the greater good worth it. However, Night Owl, Silk Spectre, Rorschach, and Dr. Manhattan have all found out about it. Warren Gibbons don't tell the reader if they believe that this is a bad thing. Instead, they want the reader to come to their own conclusion. The many answers to this question are painted by the reactions of the various characters. All the characters understand that if they were to expose what Ozymandias really did, the deaths would be brought to justice. They would have all died in vain as world's peace would have broken down. All the characters understand this and begrudgingly decide decide to accept it, all except for Rorschach, who is perhaps most different out of all the characters in terms of beliefs. Rorschach simply declares, never compromise, not even in the face of Armageddon. Due to Rorschach's arguably twisted morals, he goes out to expose Ozymandias for what he has done, which inevitably gets him killed by Dr. Manhattan as a means to prevent the truth from getting out. This serves as to point out the flaw in having a black and white moral view. Once you encounter something in a grey area, you'll find trouble, or in Rorschach's case, be killed. Rorschach couldn't survive in morally grey areas, and so Moore and Gibbons use this as a warning as to what this type of morality could bring if it's actually practiced. Watchmen was never about a fight between good and evil, but rather it was a clash between different moralities. This clash crescendos into a magnificent finish in its final chapters, and leaves the reader with the question, who was right? Was Rorschach right in trying to expose Ozymandias for killing thousands of people? Or was it Ozymandias who was right for saving humanity? Watchmen is like a Rorschach test. Everybody has a different interpretation of the novel. This all depends on which character best echoes your opinion. I leave this decision entirely in your hands.